25th day, Upper Wind Month, 1 CE. Next. A sheathed dagger was placed in front of Liam. He drew the 30-centimeter-long blade, examining its honed and oiled edge. After a moment, he reached out for the vial resting on the table by his right arm, opening it to apply wyvern venom to the dagger. He resheathed the weapon and presented it hilt first to the waiting rogue. Next. The line shifted forward. Another sheathed dagger was placed in front of him. After Helama's hurried takeover, Ijania and the local collaborators from the Draconic Kingdom took a few days to review their opening operation while the Royal Army of the Sorcerous Kingdom repositioned its forces. Despite taking many casualties over the rushed and chaotic night, there were few fatalities, probably also because it was just as chaotic for the Beastmen. He applied wyvern venom to the next dagger, resheathing it and presenting it hilt first to the waiting rogue. Next. The line shifted forward again. Another sheathed dagger was placed on the table. Liam was enacting one of the many improvements to their next to non-existent procedures. An embarrassingly large number of allied casualties resulted from local rogues crippling themselves while attempting to apply the potent venom provided by the Sorcerous Kingdom to their weapons. To prevent that, he was tasked with pre-applying it before the night's activities. Next. A wooden plank was placed on the table. Liam looked up at the burly thug who put it there. "This is a board. It's got a nail, see?" The man pointed at a crooked, rusty thing sticking out of one end. "You can poison that, right?" "I thought Helalma provided everyone with proper weapons," Liam said. The man opened his coat, revealing several daggers. "I got me some, but I like that one. It's lucky, yeah?" Liam applied wyvern venom to the board with a nail. The fact that the thing could shatter at any point aside, and the fact that the venom was probably worth 1,000 times more than the makeshift weapon, he supposed that it had better reach than a dagger. Ideally, they'd use polearms to counter the significantly longer reach of their beastman foes, but one couldn't blend into the local population well with a spear. A board with a nail could be concealed in a bundle of planks, or something. Next. A quiver with 24 quarrels was placed on the table. He looked up to see a dusky, dark-haired girl about his age standing in front of him. The girl frowned back. "What?" "Nothing." He looked back down at his work. Once each of the 40-centimeter-long projectiles was tipped with wyvern venom, the girl hefted her quiver and offered him a smile. "Thanks." "Aha." Next. The girl's smile turned into a frown and she left in a huff. What was that all about? His shift ended 3 hours later. Kai, the ninja overseeing the workshop, waved Liam over. He led him over to the office on the balcony overlooking the warehouse, where Tyra was sprawled lazily over a couch. "Pretty sure he's got it, boss." "Great." Tyra didn't get up from the couch. "Get him started on the next phase." "What did I get?" Liam asked. "A job class," Kai answered. "Well, a certain ability that comes with a certain job class. You've been applying venom to weapons for 4 hours straight. Grats." "I don't get it." Tyra turned her head slightly, cracking open a single coral eye to regard him. "The chance of not having an accident while applying venom to weapons for 4 hours straight is pretty much zero," she told him with a yawn. "A kid like you get yourself 1 in 20 times at the bare minimum. Assassins have a passive ability that prevents them from ever having an accident while applying venom to weapons." "I'm an assassin now?" Elation rose within him. He knew it, fighting was way better than studying. "Yaha. Good timing on your part, too. Experience is the best teacher or something like that." "Do I start ninja training now?" "No, you pretentious little shit," Kai said. "You start assassin training. Assassins can do a whole lot of things that rogues can't. Where should we start, boss?" "Well, since we're doing what we're doing for the next few days, we should start with studying." Liam froze. He was bad at studying. Why did fighting lead to studying? Tyra turned away from them, pulling her blanket over her shoulders. Kai led Liam back out of the office. A strain of music filtered through the air as they entered another part of their safe house in Fallujah. The notes didn't make much sense, and neither did the lyrics, but Say's song of healing worked nonetheless. Most of the injuries that their forces had received in Helalma had been healed in less than a day. They had just snuck into the city, so there was nothing for her to heal, but she practiced anyway. Since she had received the Ring of Sustenance from Lady Zaradnik, Say went crazy and worked non-stop. His sister didn't like being interrupted during a performance, so Liam and Kai went to join a group of Ijania's ninjas in a corner of the warehouse. Oh, so he didn't stick himself, Pon turned from his conversation with two other ninjas. Grats. Does everyone know about that? We are an assassin organization, Pon said. Of course it'd be common knowledge to us. Us not knowing be the same as wizards not knowing they can cast spells. Still, I can't believe how far you came in a few months. I heard our Adventurer Guild's members get strong super fast, too, Liam said. Like copper to silver in half a year or something. Yeah. Now that you put it that way, I guess you're slow. You were a rogue before you got dumped on us. How the Sorceress Kingdom broke down and categorized everything that a person was a bit scary. Everything was a job class or a skill or an ability to people like Lord Demiurge. The scariest part was that they weren't wrong, things more or less worked according to their expectations. So I'm an assassin, Liam said. What can I do? Well, Pon said, an assassin is sort of a step up from a rogue. If you compare the two, a rogue is like a sampling of what us sneaky types can do. They're generalists the same way that a wizard or fighter is a generalist compared to a war wizard or a weapon master. Or even a blacksmith compared to a weaponsmith. Anyway, the way an assassin specializes is right on the cover. We get better at doing stuff that revolves around killing people. Cloak and dagger with a fancier dagger. What happens to all the stuff I learned as a rogue? It's not as if you just forget it, Pon said. Like I said, it's a step up. You still get better at a lot of that stuff, plus you get fancier shit. He wasn't sure if it was a strange way to think about things, but, for the first time, Liam felt like he was in a real profession. Artisans, adventurers and other people had a sense of progression. Blacksmiths got better at crafting and worked better metals the further they went. Warriors like fighters and rangers learned skills and martial arts and became experts in the fields that they specialized in. As an orphan who grew up rough, he was always a nobody who had no future. Everyone saw him that way, including himself. But it turned out that nothing actually led to something. Then what can I do right now? Well, on top of all the things you can already do that you'll keep getting better at, you become more and more resistant against poison. But I can't get myself with my own venom. Well, people can still get you. Plus, that's not the only benefit of enhanced poison resistance. It helps with harvesting reagents and brewing stuff. You can use performance-enhancing substances and shrug off their detrimental effects. We do that on jobs once in a while, but that can get expensive. You can also drink people under the table, Kai added. Which also can get expensive, Pon said. Also. Pon leaned closer to Liam. Liam swallowed and leaned in to hear what he had to say. You can study. Liam drew back with a screwed-up expression. This is some sort of inside joke, right? It's no joke. Pon held out his hands disarmingly. Well, it sounds like a joke. It's kinda weird to outsiders. Assassins gain the ability to study their targets, identifying weaknesses to exploit that others just can't. When you perform a sneak attack against a properly studied target, bam, instant death. That sort of sneak attack is called a death attack. If we sneak attack someone, Liam pointed out, they're usually dead anyway. If they're chumps, sure, Kai said. Around silver rank in adventurer terms, targets get sort of chunky. Gotta stick 'em 4 or 5 times if you're around the same strength. It's not just instant death, Pon added. You can make it paralysis if you're just trying to incapacitate someone. Which is useful as well, Kai said. I've kidnapped like 200 people using that. Liam frowned and looked around. What they were talking about was all in a day's work to the members of Ijania, but it would sound horrifying to most. Nearly everyone was busy resting or getting ready for the night's operation, however. So, Liam said. You're telling me that I can hide, study some guy for a bit, then walk up and instantly kill them? Yup, Pon said. Only works for melee attacks, though. No cheating with ranged weapons. It won't work if they know you're there and a threat to them, Kai told him. It can also be resisted. Rule of thumb is that you got a 50-50 chance of landing it against someone on par with yourself. Odds go down if they're the more robust like the warrior types. Odds go up against flimsy sorts like wizards. Which is great, Pon nodded. Those damn finger wigglers usually have all sorts of magical protections, but a death attack don't give a shit about 'em. I guess I should study how to, study, Liam said. How do I start? You should already be able to do it, Kai said. Huh? Kinda like sneak attacks, Kai told him. You just do 'em. You're with me tonight, right? I'll show you what it looks like. Liam was left feeling considerably less enlightened than he had been before. He went over to where Say was playing her lute to get his bags. His sister stopped strumming the instrument and watched him prepare. Not going to say anything to me, she said. The last time I tried talking to you, Liam replied, you got mad. That's because I was in the middle of work. If I stop performing, people stop healing. He sat down on a chair across from Say. Potions, scrolls and wands were neatly organized on the wooden table between them. So, Say said, what were you talking about? They said I'm an assassin now. I was listening to them tell me what I can do. You've already been sneaking around killing people, Say said. What makes you any more of an assassin than before? I think it's because I've been sneaking around killing people that I've become an assassin. Anyway, I have some things that they say prove that I am one. I wonder if they have anything like that for me. Say idly tuned the strings of her lute. What, being able to perform spell songs isn't enough? That's just bard, Say said. But do bards become something else? Like going from rogue to assassin? Bards can become assassins too. Tyra's voice came from behind them. The leader of Arjania stretched languidly, rubbing the sleep out of her eyes. If she was out and about, it meant that it was almost time to start. How? Say asked. By doing what you need to do to become an assassin? Take it from me, a lot of things are simpler than smart people try to tell you. You do the thing, you become the thing. Easy. Should I do it? That's up to you, Tyra said. There are pros and cons. Could go either way with the type of work that you like. What else could I become? Well, the bards in Ijania are usually informants and undercover operatives, so they stick to being just good old bards. A few become assassins if disguises, poison or being able to kill people helps them do their jobs better. I wouldn't limit myself to just that, though. Someone in the Sorceress Kingdom might have a better idea of what's possible. Over the next half hour, local collaborators started to filter in from the surrounding neighborhood. Much like Helama, the humans of Fallujah had been pushed into a single quarter of the city when the beastmen occupying the province moved in. Unlike Helama, most of the clans fled when they were warned of the coming undead horde. Only one remained, a dog-type beastman clan that stubbornly refused to give up its territory. In many ways, it made things easier on Ijania and the collaborators from the Draconic Kingdom. It was not without its problems, however. While the Gao were not as physically powerful as the Felid beastmen races, they had a keen sense of smell and hearing. They also had far greater endurance than most of their Felid counterparts. The exception to this were those of the Con. The cougar-type beastmen were capable of covering twice the distance of the dog and wolf beastmen, around 80 kilometers in a day. Fortunately, the Con clans had made their stand at Helama, so they didn't have to worry about them running all over the place. All right, Tyra clapped her hands twice. Gather round, boys and girls. Any of our daytime observers see anything out of the ordinary? In addition to the Balik family from Blighthold and the local family in Fallujah, they were joined by the families from Helama and Orsport. After their success in Helama, they had so many volunteers that they had to assign about 2/3 of them to the towns in the surrounding province. Ninja officers were dispatched to oversee the operations in each town, which meant that the number of Arjania agents available for Fallujah had been reduced. Still, they weren't in the hurried state that they were in Helama. This time, they would try to do things as originally planned. There's been some infighting with those dogs, one of the observers piped up. A few groups want to escape, but they won't let them out of the gates. How many did they lose? Tyra asked. None. The ones who wanted to cut loose backed down. How long ago was this? About a half hour ago for the most recent ones. Looks like they were trying to get out under the cover of darkness. That's still good to know. We can use that. Do you know where those ones are staying? A discussion of the aforementioned incident ensued. Contrary to the image painted by their notoriety as an assassin organization, the vast majority of Ijania's work lay in non-combat operations. Performing espionage, sabotage, spreading misinformation and doing sensitive courier work were far more frequent than kidnapping, assaults and assassinations. This was especially the case with the Sorceress Kingdom since they had more than enough brute force already. So it's a tribe and not individuals trying to leave, Tyra idly twirled one of her kunai. Let's see if we can push them over the edge. What do you mean? The observer reporting the incident asked. The Royal Army's expeditionary force isn't here to just kill these dummies, Tyra answered. They're here to learn as much as they can about them. That goes double for us. We still got half the country to clean out and we're going to be working behind enemy lines after this. The members of the night team need to orient themselves before we start, so we'll see if we can't start some crap in the meanwhile. They split up into their teams, which were instructed to leave the area 5 minutes apart from one another from different alleys in the district. Liam was assigned to Ikut's team since he was familiar with them already. While they were waiting, Kai walked over to Tyra. Hey, boss. Yeah? New guy wants to see how studying works. Tyra turned her head to look in Liam's direction. Sure, she said. Now's as good a time as any. Come with me. They left the safe house through a third-floor window and silently made their way out of the district. The smell of rain filled the air, though the skies above were clear and a field of stars winked down at them from above. Moonrise was still hours away, making it an ideal time to look around with limited risk. If one had a dark vision item, at any rate, Ikut and his men, as well as the observer guiding Tyra, were limited to the faint glow of magical lighting coming from the streets below. It was a good thing that they would be working in a few hours when the light was better, or maybe that was a part of the plan all along. We're here, the observer said in a low voice. Across the street. There were a few hundred in that tribe, so they should be occupying the whole block of shophouses. Thanks, Tyra said. We'll take it from here. You can watch from a distance or just go home. Up to you. Without another word, Tyra gestured to them and snuck across the street. They scaled the buildings on the other side before heading further in. A modest courtyard with a few trees lay inside the block of buildings, and over a dozen Gao were gathered under the boughs. Tyra squatted at the edge of the rooftop. Liam strained his ears to hear what was going on. What do we do? A distressed female voice rose from the gathering. We can't stay here. You heard what those people coming through over the past week said. I'll try and talk some sense into them later tonight, a male voice replied. We just need to cool off and try again. The clan lord's just being stubborn. You understand, right? We came out all this way and won a land of our own. Giving it up without a fight is. This isn't the same as fighting another tribe. They're undead. Undead. You heard the stories, right? They're not here for territory, they're here for us. It doesn't matter if you're a beastman or an animal, so long as you're alive. And when they get you. Dog-like whining noises rose from below. Liam silently shook his head. Lady Zaradnik was scary even when she wasn't trying to scare anyone. She was doing it on purpose now, and every single beastman was visibly gripped by terror. No one went outside if they could help it, and the city was frozen in fear. Fine, I'll go right now. Wait here and don't do anything rash. A large Gao with reddish-brown fur and floppy ears turned from the gathering, walking through the alley below them and out into the street. They followed him from the rooftops as he circled the city blocks for a good 30 minutes, his gaze focused on the pavement all the while. When he finally stopped circling to head towards the city center, Tyra held her left hand out by her hip. All right, watch this. After one last look around the empty street, she made some hand signs and vanished. The goss started as she popped out of the shadow of the lamppost in front of him. Tyra reached up and gave his nose a pat. Boop, she said. The Gao collapsed to the cobblestones and lay still. Liam frowned at the result. Tyra knelt to pull a cobblestone from the street and whacked the dead Gao in the back of the head. She used a trooper's towel to clean the scene as she leapt into the shadow of the lamppost and reappeared in front of Liam. They settled in a safe distance downwind to see what would happen. Liam peered at the fallen form of the beastman. I don't get it, he said. How did you do that? It was a death attack, Tyra said. Once you've studied your target, you launch a sneak attack in melee. That didn't look like an attack at all, Liam told her. It was a boop. We did the same thing for sneak attacks back when you started training too, right? It did happen, But the explanation wasn't satisfying at all. Sneak attacks happened when one was caught unaware or otherwise preoccupied and unprepared. That included when one was fighting and they knew the attacker was there, but couldn't do anything about it. Throwing a pebble at the head of an oblivious target in plate armor would usually just have the pebble bounce off of their helmet. If the person throwing the pebble was from a vocation capable of sneak attacks, however, the power of that person's sneak attack would be applied to the pebble. If it was thrown by a sufficiently powerful rogue, the pebble would go straight through the helmet and kill the target. So can I do that, as well? Not as you are, Tyra said. I'm strong enough that a regular slap from me would have killed that Beastman Lord anyway, so the death attack was pretty much guaranteed. It was a demonstration of what's possible. As an assassin, going full force with everything all the time is usually a waste of energy. The vast majority of people are weak and there's no reason to stab them so hard that they explode. That's actually detrimental most of the time. It's flashy, makes a mess, and raises a big stink. Ah, here we go. The smell of blood eventually drew a cow from a nearby alley. It raised its nose in the air, sniffing as it cautiously circled the body. After several minutes, it finally decided it was safe enough to approach. More cow had appeared by then, running up to crowd around the dead lord. A few ran in two different directions. One group went the way he came from, while another group headed towards the city center. The fallen lord's tribe appeared minutes later. No, the female from before cried mournfully, no. Why, who would do this? Glares were leveled at a few of the beastmen who had come out from nearby. They made hurried gestures. It wasn't us. He was already like this when he came out to see where the scent of blood was coming from. Do you know what he was doing out here? He went to talk some sense into the clan lord less than an hour ago, the female replied. Maybe the humans attacked him, someone suggested. There aren't any human smells around him. Plus, it looks like he went down without a fight. Someone just ripped a chunk out of the road and humans aren't strong enough to do that. Another group of beastmen came jogging in from the city center. The dead lord's tribe tightened ranks and glared at the newcomers. You did this. The female howled. Bashed him in the back of the head, too, someone said. Honorless mongrels. Let's not be so quick to blame others, shall we? The largest of the second group replied calmly, we only heard about this just now. If it was us, the wounds would be different. A likely story, the female's voice came back thick with distrust. We'd obviously know who did it if you fought normally, so you did him in with a rock. I don't have anything like that on me. You probably hid it somewhere. There isn't even anyone else's scent on him, the clan lord noted. And that's extra suspicious. You probably found a weird human item. What motive would I have to kill him? We need all the people we can get to resist the undead horde. Because he wanted to leave. You killed him so he wouldn't influence everyone else. The clan lord stared at the female for a good long while, which only seemed to antagonize her even further. Look, he sighed. We can't afford this right now. The undead will be showing up any day and I don't intend to do the killing for them. You need to go back to your dens and not cause any trouble. That goes for everyone else, too. They watched the beastmen slowly disperse. A few of the clan lord's escorts carried the body of the dead lord away. So what did that do for us? He asked. Our founder once said that a single ninja can take down a fortress through misinformation and manipulation alone, Tyra told him. That's what we're doing here. We were in a rush in Helama so that wasn't possible, but things are pretty ideal in Fallujah. Baroness Zaradnik is very good at what she does. She's already primed the pump for our operation. She did? The one thing that all living beings have in common is fear. Fear is what keeps one alive, and Zaradnik's pushed all these beastmen into survival mode. How each race and individual acts when they're dominated by fear depends on their nature and experiences, but we know that these guys are basically an undisciplined mob. They aren't thinking straight anymore. That much he could understand. When humans let fear rule them, they became hysterical, saw things that lined up with their fears and acted irrationally in general. Humans were only one of many races in the world, so to do their job properly as members of the Sorceress Kingdom's intelligence arm, they needed to learn how to operate around as many races as possible. Got it, Liam said. What do we do now? Tyra's gaze went up the street to where the dead lord's tribe had turned the corner. Now, she said, it's your turn. Liam joined Kai on the rooftops, testing his footing on the slick wooden beams. The expected moonrise never came, but the rain that he smelled earlier certainly did. He looked up for signs of their aerial observers, but he couldn't see anything against the starless sky. "Are those elder liches really there?" "They're there," Kai said. "You're just not good enough to sense them yet." "Can the beastmen see them?" "Probably not. We can't account for all of them, but they've been chumps so far. The dogs and wolves have good hearing and a strong sense of smell, but those bony guys don't smell like much of anything. Might hear their robes fluttering if it gets windy, though." Kai ran ahead, leaving Liam with Ikut and his team. Would it always be like this? They had an entirely different set of considerations to make than when they were dealing with Felid beastmen. Growing up in a human town, he didn't have to think about what humans could or couldn't do. He was just used to dealing with them. With other races, he had to keep what they were capable of in mind at all times. Felid beastmen could move their ears independently to focus their hearing in two different directions. They could sense vibrations in the air with their whiskers. Being high up was decent protection against Nar and Irma, but Osalo and Kon could reach the rooftops in seconds. In Fallujah, they couldn't speak once they left the human parts of the city because nearby Gao would probably hear them. They couldn't linger in one place for too long or their scent would get too heavy. One had to be mindful of which way the wind blew and how air currents flowed through the streets. He looked over his shoulder to where Ikut and his men were carefully picking their way over the rooftop behind him. Ijania had an elaborate language of hand signs to communicate when they couldn't talk normally, but the Draconic Kingdom's volunteers did not. They had come up with some basic signals to help out with the problem, but Liam wasn't confident that things would go smoothly. A light blinked from a rooftop in the next district. Liam pulled his mask over his mouth and nose. "We're clear. Let's go." Not that they could go much faster in the rain. On top of that, they could only move as quickly as their least stealthy member. They followed the alley side of each rooftop to avoid any unexpected beastmen spotting them from the street. The alleys were too narrow for anyone in them to see what was going on above. By the time they caught up to Kai, he was stepping back out onto the rooftops from a third-story dormer. He reached down and pulled the curtains shut before closing the window. After a quick glance around them, his hand started to move. "Take your guys clockwise." Liam nodded and gestured to his team. Like Rantel, the city was built in blocks that were basically sets of buildings squeezed together to make the greatest use of limited space. Short alleys led to small courtyards, but the poorer parts of the city just squished more and more buildings together until the backways became dark and maze-like. Since the Draconic Kingdom's citizens had been pushed into those poorer districts, they didn't have to deal with that. The nature of those poorer districts also worked to the humans' advantage, while the wealthier districts being occupied by beastmen had any number of things that infiltrators could exploit. They reached the next set of dormers. Liam gestured to one of Ikut's men, then pointed to the latch. The man crouched and crept forward, gingerly leaning forward to peek through the window before pulling out a set of tools. Before setting up the teams for the city, they went through all of the volunteers to figure out what they were good at. The man working on the window was better than Liam at picking locks and breaking into buildings, which should have also meant he was stronger than Liam. However, like Liam before he started his training, the man hadn't realized his full potential. He probably never would. It was weird, in hindsight. Not a year ago, Liam saw the world as they did. No, nearly everyone saw things the same way. Someone could be a sneak or a footpad, a con artist or a thug, a fence, cutpurse, or burglar. Back then, they were all different things to him. Now they were all part of the same job, rogue. Before, he was just a sneak who fished for information to sell. Now, he could do it all, though he still liked doing some things over others. What made the difference was knowledge, will and practice. The latch clicked open. The man gingerly tested the window. Liam gestured urgently for the others to enter. It didn't matter whether the hinges squeaked or not. Any light sleepers would smell the air coming in from outside. He was the last one in, so he closed the window and drew the curtains shut. The two beastmen sleeping in the room were already dead and the door to the hall hung open. His boots went from joint to joint to avoid any creaky floorboards and he opened the closest untaken door. His dagger came out as he went to the nearest bed. Liam's eyes only lingered for as long as it took to plant his killing strike. Beastmen had massive, muscular bodies with tough hides, but their heads were as vulnerable as any humans. Bodies twitched and jerked as skulls were smashed open by the pommel of his weapon. After killing the 4 occupants of the room, he jammed the window latch and closed the curtains. Wealthier citizens could afford a degree of privacy, and that worked to an infiltrator's advantage. Thick walls muffled sound and the glass windows kept the scent of blood and decay from escaping. Thick curtains kept anyone from casually looking in, so it might take days, if not weeks, for anyone to notice that the occupants were dead. Except we need them to notice by morning? Tyra probably had some plan for that. Liam rejoined Ikut's team after shutting the fireplace flue and using a magic item to remove traces of his scent. They headed down the stairwell to clear the 2nd floor. The door just past the landing was open. Ikut held up a hand and gestured for Liam to take a look. Liam leaned forward to peek around the doorframe, finding that his dark vision was unnecessary. A group of shivering Gao were wrapped in blankets in the far corner of the room. They huddled tightly around a candle as if the feeble flame could keep their mounting fears at bay. Liam turned back to Ikut and held up 4 fingers, then pointed up to indicate that they were awake. The rogue from Blighthold produced a silence scroll from his bandolier and activated it. They rushed into the room with envenomed blades drawn, making light cuts that would hopefully be mistaken for wounds from claws or teeth. With the scroll's effect still active, they didn't stick around to cover up their handiwork. They swiftly moved from room to room, charging in to overwhelm any targets that were awake. Once their grisly work was done, the men went to take care of the assault's aftermath. They left their weapons with Liam to re-envenom. He relaxed, letting out a soft breath as he went through the familiar process. Things were going much more smoothly than they had in Hell Armor. It was not only less chaotic, but the team had become accustomed to moving as a group and were all on the same page when it came to their procedures. After clearing the building's 1st floor, they returned to the rooftops to find a dead Gao lying on the shingles. Ikut looked at Liam with a question on his face. He shook his head in response, then gestured to the next building. They had no clue why it was there, but it wouldn't be unless someone had left it for some reason. As they went to clear the next building, they found another corpse deposited by the dormer. 3 buildings later, they found Kai waiting for them. Liam looked around for the ninja's team. "Where are your people?" "Finishing up. Boss told us to wait for her." It probably had something to do with the dead beastmen on the roof. A minute later, Tyra appeared with another one held overhead. The demi-human was probably 5 times her mass, so it made for an odd sight. She soundlessly set it down on the shingles and looked around. "Think 6 is enough?" "Yeah. We're good to go here." Tyra produced a scroll, using a nook on the roof to hide its telltale activation flare. A few minutes later, 4 elder liches floated down from the low-hanging clouds. One of them pointed a withered finger at the beastman's corpse. Ikut and his men backed away as the body pushed itself to its feet. "All right, time to stir this pot. We'll use these whites to attack the demis in the courtyard. We'll let a couple escape and kill the rest behind them." "How do they get down from here?" "Never mind." 3 of the elder liches returned from other parts of the roof, each floating along with a white clinging to their legs. Tyra led them to an empty alley, where they descended to drop off their undead actors. Liam watched with morbid curiosity as the whites dashed into the courtyard. One of the Gao in the courtyard rose at the sound of their approach. "Hey, what the hell are you?" A white leapt on him, clawing and biting with wild abandon. The other beastmen roused at the sound of the struggle, and the courtyard quickly devolved into a chaotic melee. "Damn it, it's the clan lord's thugs." A voice carried over the fighting. Somebody warned the others, "He can't get away with this." Arg. One of the beastmen ran off. Tyra and Kai stepped into the shadows. Liam only spotted them in the courtyard after a couple of the beastmen fell, and the fight ended a few seconds later. Tyra and Kai reappeared on the roof beside them. She nodded at the elder liches. The undead mages flew down and picked up their whites, flying away to vanish into the clouds. "All right, we're done. Let's get out of here." They followed Tyra back to the human-occupied part of town. Liam let out a long sigh after entering the safe house. "Welcome back," Say said from her table. "Anyone hurt?" "Not a scratch," Ikut grinned. "Are we the first ones back?" "Don't relax just yet," Tyra said. "Get restocked on consumables. We're going out again in 5. Liam went to replace his spent vials of venom. Kai was already at the collection of crates doing the same. The ninja glanced over his shoulder. How'd it go? Better, Liam replied. The team wasn't all over the place this time. Same here. Weird. Weird? Yeah, Kai said. People usually don't go from screw-ups everywhere to none. Not that quick. How about you? Feeling anything? I don't get what you mean. You know, guilt over killing a bunch of people in their sleep. Setting these poor guys up like this. Being surrounded by things that'll eat ya. Not being sure about what to do. No, Liam shook his head. All I was thinking about is what I needed to do next and what would happen after. What they were doing was clear enough, but what would happen wasn't. A group of humans might turn on one another or just break up, but they weren't fighting humans. For all they knew, their setup wasn't something beastmen would do at all and that would turn the beastmen against the citizens of Fallujah. I wonder if they're putting something in the rations, Kai muttered. Huh? You're like, what, 13? I've never known any 13-year-old brats that'd be so calm in your shoes. Maybe they're using drugs to keep you level. It's Zaradnik, Tyra's low voice sounded from behind them. The Baroness? Kai frowned. She got you all good in hell armor, Tyra said. Commanders need to forge some kind of bond with their subordinates for their skills and abilities to take full effect. You've fought a noble's personal retinue before, yeah? Or Imperial Knights? Yeah. Probably the most annoying hits we got. It's the same deal here. People under the influence of a leader gain all sorts of benefits. They're harder to shake, they screw up less. They can move faster and they're more coordinated. What they get depends on what their leaders developed, but there's no way in hell the Sorceress Kingdom isn't squeezing Zaradnik for everything she's got. Just like Liam, here. Tyra gave him a poke. Did Lady Zaradnik go through some sort of training, too? You probably didn't have to be an amazing commander with how strong the Sorceress Kingdom's royal army was, but, as Tyra said, the higher-ups in the Sorceress Kingdom were seemingly obsessed with getting all they could out of everyone that worked for them. I don't like the sound of that, Kai said. Those Imperial Knights don't break at all. They fight until they die, they're ordered to withdraw, or till their officer breaks. Dying under a mountain of beastmen because of some ability ain't something I fancy. That won't happen, Tara said. Zaradnik doesn't fight like a hobgoblin or a human noble, so we're not gonna be thrown into the grinder like rank-and-file infantry. She's got the undead for that anyway. I'm pretty sure she thinks more like we do than an Imperial Knight. The target doesn't know what's going on until it's too late. Everything's just setup after setup after setup. She really a noble from Riastais? Those guys are about as honest as they come for tactics. Always said she's a bona fide ranger, so that probably explains her style. Willinem was a highly experienced Ijarnio agent responsible for teaching Liam and Say how to conduct clandestine operations. They were surprised when they were introduced to the supposedly elf woman from Facet County by Tyra, but he supposed that she wouldn't be much of an agent if a couple of kids could figure out what she was. Yep, Tyra said. We stayed over in Zaradnik's fief for a while. You ready to go? Yeah, Liam straightened his vest. What's going to happen? That's up to the beastmen, Tyra replied. Hopefully, they put on a nice show for us. The drizzle had increased to a steady rain outside, turning the alleys slick with mud. Liam pulled the hood of his mantle over his head, going over to join Ikut and his team. Did anything happen? Everyone else came back, Ikut replied. Last ones in said that the beastmen are coming out onto the streets. We moved the citizens further into the district just in case something happens. Liam nodded. As with Halama, they fortified the human district of Fallujah with traps and barricades preceding their operation. It effectively set a time limit for them, as beastmen would come sniffing around to look for their missing hunters, but the chaos ode was growing fast. Tyra motioned for them to get to their positions. Liam scaled a nearby wall, staying low as he made his way to his team's spot along one of the main thoroughfares. For the time being, they were to make sure that whatever happened, if anything even happened, didn't spill into the human-populated portion of the city. He peeked over the ridge of the roof. Dozens of beastmen were gathered in the street. That guy, he went too far. You actually believe what they're saying? What else could it be? You heard what that dead chieftain's wife said. The clan lord sent his people to attack them after he sent them back to their dens. Kieran? She's hysterical. It could have been anything. Then why is the clan lord so reluctant to bring out the guys that she said attacked them? If their noses are clean, then they'd have nothing to hide. Similar arguments rose from the other groups below. Liam shook his head as he listened to them branch into wild theories about what had happened. He still wasn't sure of Beastman behavior, but it at least sounded like they weren't just idly speculating. Mrs. Lynham taught them that what people could come up with in their own heads was more personally compelling than what others could tell them. All one needed to do was point them in the right direction, and they would usually convince themselves of the truth. Once they got to that point, it was extremely hard to shake them out of their conclusions. Effective long-term infiltration involved priming the operations area by planting many such conclusions that supported the operatives in their task. Even before the elf agent's lessons, Liam already understood it to be true. It was especially useful when dealing with other races since he couldn't know exactly how they thought or saw things. People believed what they wanted to believe, even if it was seen as nonsense by others. What he hadn't known was the fact that skills and abilities existed, making that behavior utterly terrifying when it gripped someone who had the power to influence others. "Get back inside, all of you." A pack of burly Gao appeared down the street. Even if they weren't human, Liam could only think that they looked like a group of thugs sent out to carry out their boss's instructions. Some of the beastmen slinked away, but hundreds more stood their ground. "What, we're prisoners now?" "I didn't say that. It's not safe." "Not safe for who? Is the clan lord scared of a little bit of talk?" "This isn't the time. We have bigger worries right now." Yeah. That's what you guys are always saying. But we don't need to stick around for those bigger worries. That stubborn clan lord is forcing us to stay here." Murmurs of agreement rose from the gathered beastmen. "I've said what I had to say." The leader of the clan lord's thugs crossed his arms. "Get back inside." The two sides stared at one another through the rain. A tense silence stretched on for a dozen heartbeats before a few beastmen in the back of the crowd turned away to walk toward the city's northeastern gate. "Hey," the leader of the thugs said, "where do you think you're going?" "Leaving. You're just splitting us up again so you can kill us just like that other tribe. That doesn't even make any sense. The undead are out there. Why would we kill the people we need to help fight them off?" "Who knows? The whole world's gone crazy and we're not sticking around to be slaughtered either way." The thugs glared at the backs of the departing beastmen. If they tried to force them to stay, it would only make things worse. Seeing how impotent the clan lord's enforcers were, more beastmen started to leave. "They're finished." No, they never had a chance to begin with. They weren't even fighting the same fight. The beastmen were trying to resist the undead, but the Sorceress Kingdom was here to liberate the Draconic Kingdom. How could one act to defeat an opponent if they didn't know what the other side's conditions for defeat were? The Sorceress Kingdom's royal army had woven an illusion over an entire country, and it was working. After the crowd dispersed and the thugs returned to the city center, Ikut rose and wiped the rain off of his face. "Is that it?" he said. "Was it truly that easy?" "Hey," Kai said, "a lot of prep went into it. Not just from us." "That may be true," Ikut said, "but I didn't think they would so simply leave. Everything's falling to pieces here. The idea of holding out isn't in the cards. The undead are still far out of sight of the walls, so there's no reason they'd think escape is impossible." The royal army already had the city surrounded, but, as Kai mentioned, they were still beyond the horizon. By the time the beastmen realized that they were there, it would be too late. Lady Zaradnik's tactics had a cold sense of inevitability to them. It didn't matter how clever or resourceful the enemy was, any number of stupid things could happen, but the ultimate objective was always firmly in hand. There were setups and contingencies all over the place. Even Liam's little part in Fallujah was the same. Ijania could still eliminate every single beastman in the city if their initial plan went sideways. "So," Ikut said, "what now?" "Give the beastmen a bit to sort themselves out," Kai said. "The boss'll be reporting to Captain Zaradnik, then command will make the call. Get some rest while you can." Liam felt the tension drain from him after he returned to the safe house. His work was far from the exciting tales that bards made an assassin's life out to be. While he did get to put his skills to use, he didn't go from scene to scene filled with action and drama. It was more about maintaining an edge that could be used at any given time, which meant his days were usually filled with training, studying and rest. Aside from being in a different country, it wasn't all too different from what he did in Irantal. "You stink." Say's remark greeted him when he went to his cot. He pulled out his trooper's towel to clean himself. Every member of Ijania had received one or two to help out with their work. "What do you think about what happened?" Liam asked. "I think it's good that kind of stuff works," Say answered. "If the only thing we could do against the beastmen was fight, that would have sucked for me. Don't tell me you're going to try and pull something." "If I need to. If it works, right?" That had been her mindset going to the Holy Kingdom of Roble, as well. Liam thought that she listened too much to Tyra and Mrs. Lynon when it came to some things. Everyone else seemed to think it was admirable, though, even the priests and clerics in the cathedral. Liam woke late in the afternoon. He went to take a peek at the main area of the safe house before getting ready for the evening. Things looked calm and barely anyone could be seen. Say was still sleeping in a cot above his. Lady Zaradnik said that, even with a ring of sustenance, it was still good to sleep and eat regularly since she was still growing. He left their little corner of the warehouse, heading over to pick up some food from the kitchen. They didn't actually cook anything there, it was just where they put their rations. He passed upon at a table on the way there and returned with his meal to sit down with him. "What did the army say?" Liam asked. "The boss said they're nabbing all the beastmen that ran off," Pon answered. "We're ahead of schedule with what happened yesterday, but we got the go-ahead to clean up the rest." "How many are left in the city?" "Not many. 20%, maybe. Once this sort of thing starts, it only gets worse. Their morale was already in the shitter before. Every tribe that leaves means they have that much less of a chance of winning against the undead, and more tribes leave as a result." "Why didn't the people here do that?" The Draconic Kingdom's citizens. They were losing against the beastmen, but they didn't run. "Well, beastmen aren't undead, for one. You saw how things were on the way here. Sure, a bunch of people got eaten, but the rest are still sitting on their land. Compare that to running, you got no livelihood, you starve, the end. These people have been prey for the beastmen for generations, so the way they calculate things like that is different than someone from Reestais or the Empire." Was it better to be livestock than dead? In a way, they were probably right. He didn't think it was a great way to live, but the people here could still have families before they were eaten. The population as a whole was safe in a weird way because the beastmen would protect them like human villagers did with their livestock. On the other hand, if someone ran to escape the beastmen, work didn't just conveniently make itself available wherever they ended up. A foreign city would be even worse. It was probable that they would starve or be killed along the way. Tyra appeared an hour later, stretching and yawning as she made her way down the office stairs. "All right," she stretched again and rubbed a sleepy eye. "Time for work." "Where are we going?" Liam asked. "Getting rid of what's left." What's left?" "As of half an hour ago," Pon said, "the clan lord and his followers." "That's it?" "Yep. Over 10,000 beastmen have abandoned the city since this whole avalanche started." "Wow. I kinda feel sorry for that clan lord, now." "We calling it off, then?" Haha, no. Let's go." They got their things together and left the safe house as the sun was setting over the city. Strangely enough, the city didn't feel much different with so many of the beastmen gone. The streets were still empty and every building remained silent. Tyro stopped on a rooftop not far from the city's inner wall. "How are the Lord's followers set up?" "Spread out. Most are on the city's outer wall watching out for the undead. We got a clear line once we get through here." "All right. Let's take this gatehouse and move in." Tyra split her ninjas up into 3 teams, taking the entrance to the inner city in much the same way that they had broken into Helama. After hiding a handful of beastman bodies in the alleys below the walls, they moved in as a group through the shadows of overgrown estates and government offices. Their pace increased when they came within a few hundred meters of the central keep. The ninjas dashed ahead, vanishing into the shadows to appear beside the few beastmen along the way. Each fell soundlessly and the ninjas didn't break stride, flickering from shadow to shadow as they carried out their methodical mass execution. The guards at the central keep were already down by the time Liam and the Draconic Kingdom's volunteers caught up. Tyra casually strolled in through the front gate. In the building's great hall, the clan lord and his followers stood abruptly at her entrance. He stared at her for a moment, his nose and face twitching with emotion. "You," he said, "I knew something else was going on. It was you damned humans all along." In response, Tyra offered a guilty smile, drawing her dagger with a shrug.